Hello everyone, welcome to the Firefox localization project. I am Tyler and I'm going to take you through how to use the scorecard2.gevterm.net website. This is a site that will help you do the evaluation of the Firefox translation. So to get to it, go to scorecard2.gevterm.net. The first time you're here, you'll have to register for an account. Once you register, you'll be able to log in, like so. When you first log in, you'll probably only have one scorecard. It'll be titled Firefox Localization. To access it, you just click Simple Scorecard, and it should take you to a page that looks like this. Okay, now the top here is a bunch of general information, and you won't have to do anything. You can just leave this the way it is. Now to the next section here is the source and target. When you get the metric, the people involved with the project will have already uploaded a source target pair segments for you to do the assessment on. So it'll look something like this, and you can scroll previous to next. You can also use the arrow keys to scroll between the segments, like so. And you can also use the jump feature if you'd like to jump to a certain segment. Jump. Okay. Now the next section are the different error categories. These are basically categories that when you find an error, you use these categories to describe that error. There are 13 in this scorecard, and we'll go through a few examples so that you know what kind of error goes in each different error category. So the first error is contained in this source target pair. The language, the source language we have here is a very interesting language called Pig Latin. So it's not a real language. There are no native speakers. But it is a kind of a word game that we use in English. Basically, you'll take the first part of a word, move it to the end, and then add an A. So there becomes erete. So you'll notice the target language is English. Okay, so the first error is there is a in my boot. If you look at the source language, there is a missing word. It's esne, which if you do the Pig Latin translation is snake. So it should say there is a snake in my boot. But because something is missing, there's an error. In this case, something was omitted. So omission is the error type. You'll notice when I scrolled over the omission box, there was a description that popped up, which will help you decide on which errors go in which error categories. You'll also know the box changed. It shows a bunch of buttons and different severity levels. The severity levels are minor, major, and critical. So after you identify the error and have classified it as omission in this case, the next step is to identify the severity. Now, a minor error is an error that you can't decide. It might be correct or it might be wrong. So you're not sure if it's an error, so you put it in minor. A major error is definitely an error, but the text is still usable. And a critical error is there's an error, it's definitely an error, and it makes the translation unusable. We'll see a couple of examples of each one. Now in this case, there is in my boot does not make sense in English, so we would classify this as a critical omission error. Moving on to the next segment. This one says, well, my Pig Latin is not native, but ote finite dene ionbe. So the translation should literally be to infinity and beyond. You'll notice that the translation in English says to infinity and beyond the stars. So there was a slight addition to the target there. So this would be in the addition error. You'll notice that to infinity and beyond the stars makes sense, but it was not the exact translation that we were going for. So in this case, we would have a minor addition error. Next segment, this one says left click on the dog. The original Pig Latin says left click on the mouse. So in this case, we have a classic mistranslation. So this case, left click on the dog does not make sense in English, and especially in web translation or computer use. You cannot left click on the dog unless there's a dog on the page, like an image. But in this case, we were going with mouse. So critical error, mistranslation. Alright, the next one, the Pig Latin says, oge ote ethe einme enume. And then the English says, go to the main enume. So you'll notice that enume was not translated and was therefore left untranslated. Now since enume makes no sense in English, we'll go with critical. The next segments could be classified as two different error categories. So you kind of have to decide, and it's your best judgment as a rater. This one, again, you'll see that it says ausme, mouse, and the target says right click on the rodent. Well, probably a better example for the error is what we were going for was terminology on this one. But probably a better one is in English the word flash drive or thumb drive or memory stick, those little USBs that you carry around. There's many different translations for that word because there's many different English words for that item. So any one of those could be correct, But which one is the correct one depends on the term base. Now, the Mozilla term base that we're working with can be found at this website, transvision.mozfr.org. So you'll come to the Transvision website, which contains all the translations that have been done of the Firefox browser in the past. So we'll click on the repository that we're using is release. The source language was English. And then you'll click on whatever language is your target language that you're working with. So let's say we were using Mexican Spanish, and we wanted to look up the term web browser, because I've never translated that before. I don't know what web browser is in Spanish. So we'll look at these different translations that have been done. I noticed that browser's here at the end. Looking at the words in Spanish, I see that navegador is used. There's another one here. I see navegador again. And I guess that's the translation that's been used. I have heard people say in Spanish browser, so I know that's a possibility when translating browser into Spanish. But it looks like the translation that has been used is navegador. So if I see that somebody translated web browser as browser de web or something like that, then I would know that a terminology error was committed, and I would mark it. Okay. On the next segment, pretend that there is only one translation. You see it here. It says Oge Ote Uxmarkspe, which means go to bookmarks. But let's say that Uxmarkspe was the same word as favorites and bookmarks, and that the term base used both. It was used interchangeably. You could say bookmarks or you could say favorites, and it's fine. What we want, though, is consistency. We want this translation to always be either one or the other. So if you see a different translation in different segments, you will mark inconsistency. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to mark a minor inconsistency, since that word is the same in Pig Latin. Alright, now this one's a little interesting. It's a little bit more lengthy, but basically, if you look at the English translation, you'll find that it is very informal. In fact, you would even say it's probably like a gangster translation of the Pig Latin. So each language has a different, I guess, register or formality level that you're supposed to translate into. For example, the Mexican Spanish version of the Firefox web browser uses the informal to, and is a lot more friendly, personable than perhaps the European Spanish, which is a more formal translation. Now each language and each locale prefers a different type of translation. So you'll have to find out what is typically used and make sure that they are not using the gangster version of whatever language you are translating into. So for this one, the register was very informal. It makes no sense if I'm expecting formal English, so I'll do a critical error. Next, this one, in English, it says Firefox has a new update, but the T was duplicated. This is a simple spelling mistake, and I still understood what they meant, so I'll just mark major there. Next, you'll notice that the exclamation point, the punctuation, is out of place. This is not a spelling error, but it is a typography error. And typography errors include any sort of punctuation mistake. There's also accents out of place, or like the ñ in Spanish, or the little c tail in Portuguese and French. So any diacritical marks or punctuation are included in typography errors. Okay, the next one. This one says down with Chrome. And this one in English says Chrome down with. Now the word order is messed up. So this would be a grammar error. It was still readable, so once again it's probably a judgment call, just whatever you think is best. I thought it was probably major. The next one is a little bit more tricky. You'll notice that this should say $14,000. The program costs $14,000. In the Pig Latin, the period was used as the thousandths place marker, and the comma was used for the cents. In English, that's actually supposed to be opposite. The comma marks the thousandths place, and the period marks the cents. But we'll notice that it was left like so. So I guess you could go with untranslated, but another option is locale convention. In English, we have a certain way of displaying numbers, and that was incorrect. So we would mark a error in the locale convention. Now, anything that is how you display text, the way that is done in a language, then that would fall under locale convention. We'll talk about that in the next segment as well. Now this one, you'll notice that has a, I had a little issue with it. This is the target right here. So the source text says a bunch of stuff, but in English it says buy one for 3 Pig Latin dollars will stay, instead of this is actually Filipino peso sign, but we'll say it's Pig Latin dollars. So buy one for 3 Pig Latin dollars at Pigpen's local restaurant. So you'll notice that the translation is actually 100% accurate, and it reads just fine. It's fluent, but English speakers have no concept of what a Pig Latin dollar is worth. Also, there are no Pigpen's local restaurants anywhere in the English-speaking world. So it's not an accuracy, a fluency error, but it's a verity error. And the fact that these, or the money and the locale do not apply. So locale applicability. It does not apply to an English-speaking world. So you would mark it. Yes, so hopefully that makes sense. If the difference between locale convention and locale applicability is this is how you display the text, and the way that you displayed it in English or whatever your target language is wrong. And then the content of the text, it was wrong because of the way that you say things in whatever your target language is. It's locale applicability. It does not apply. We've left Verity General in there as well. The next example says have, or I'll do Ave a igpe a day. Have a piggy day. Well, that's a fine translation, except for in English, we never say have a piggy day. So it does not apply to the English world. So it could be locale applicability, but if it's something else, you might just put it in the general category if you can't decide. So if you have trouble deciding, or if you don't remember how to use the scorecard, you can come back to the desktop page here, and there's a help link at the top. Now the help link, a couple options which will be good for you, is how to use a metric. And this shows you a bunch of options, where you need to click to get certain things done. It's probably more than you'll need, but you'll notice in step 5, there's a description of the severity categories, minor, major, critical, and you can use those to decide. Also, there's an issue types decision tree. It does not have every single error category, and hopefully by the time you are seeing this video, it will have every single error category. But right now it has about half of them. So whenever you encounter an error and you can't decide what category it belongs to, you can come here and answer the questions, and it will help you decide. The first question you got to ask is whether you can determine the error by looking at the source and the target text, or you can just look at the source or the target individually and identify the error. For example, the spelling error. So let's say we had a spelling issue. You could look at the text, let's say the target text, and that's where the spelling error is. You wouldn't have to look at the source to recognize that there's been a spelling error. So that would be a fluency issue. Some issues might read just perfectly, like to infinity and beyond the stars. But when you look at the source text, you realize there's an error. So you had to use source and target, then it's probably an accuracy error. So you'd come here. Is source content omitted from the target? Yes. Oh, in that example, no. Has unneeded content been added to the target text? Yes. Okay. There's an addition error. So feel free to use the decision tree, and hopefully this was useful. Thank you once again for participating in the Firefox localization project. If you have any questions, just contact the people that are in charge of your particular group, and thank you once again.